Hi everyone, welcome to Pam's live demo. We're going to do a burn demo today. I'm just going to let everybody join, so I'm not going to get started on the makeup straight away. I'm going to, hi Julia, I'm just going to talk through some of the products that I'm going to be using today. The first thing I've done, just to save a little bit of time, I've just prepped Hannah's hair. I stuck it all down with some Got2b glue, just the yellow spray. Sprayed it all in the hair and used a hairdryer just to press it down nice and flat. I then used just a bit of spirit gum, any spirit gum, just all around the edges, and used an old scrap of bald cap. It didn't have to be anything fancy, and just laid that over the top, and I've just blended over the edges. So that is all prepped and ready to go. So the main things that I'm going to be using today are glazing gels, skin illustrators, silicone, KY jelly, and some cat plastic. Hannah's going to be reading out questions for me, she can keep on top of them. And we apologise, we do have a little dog on Hannah's lap. Hey. She won't sit on her own, so she's going to have to stay on the lap for now. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm just going to prep Hannah's skin. I'm just going to use a bit of Tillysis Brisk. I'm using my reusable cotton pads here. Right, so I'm just going to prep the area that I've not done anything to yet. So it's just a bit of Tillysis Brisk. Close your eyes for me. Just clean all the skin down. Now, in case anyone's wondering, this is just a bit of Velcro, but it's my favourite thing to hold hair back with. Did have another one? There we go. This is the other one. It's just a little bit of Velcro, and it just holds all the hair back out of the way. It's really good for barbering as well.
You said in your Sunday best.
Okay, so next thing I'm using is just a bit of Derma Shield. I have found that the glazing gels that I'm going to use do tend to stain. We found that out the hard way yesterday when we were doing a little practice. Yeah, so the colours that I'm going to be using today, one is called Sunburn and the other one is called Bright Yellow, and they do tend to stain the skin a little bit, so I'm just going to use a bit of Derma Shield just to prep the skin first. That's this one here. Okay, right, next thing. So I'm going to be using glazing gels first. Now with all of the colours that are going on today, because they're going to be going under the burn sheet and under KY jelly and under everything else, we can afford to be quite rough with the colouring. It doesn't have to be a really detailed colouring because everything's going to pile on top, and actually the rougher it is and the more organic it is, the better it will look actually. So these are the glazing gels. What I find quite tricky is sometimes getting to work out what colours they are in the pots. So I've just done a little chart that I've laminated, and it's just a really quick reference to make sure you know which colours you're using. So the colours that I'm going to be using today are the Sunburn, this one here, and the Bright Yellow. Right, so as I said, this whole process at the beginning, all the colouring can be really rough and quick. And actually the less perfect you are with it and the more random, the better the outcome.
We say, can you please save the live?
Yes, we will save the live. Somebody has told me how to do it, so yes, I will be doing that. So I find that when I do the colouring at the beginning, I start with the lighter colours first. So I go in with all the yellows. I've coloured Hannah's hair a little bit with some foundation as well, just to try and knock the dark out. But you can see how rough I'm being with this yellow. And you'll see how it will completely disappear under everything else. I might need to go over the hair a little bit more later with some skin tone, but we'll see how it goes.
What make up the glazing gels?
The glazing gels are, so they're by Skin Illustrator, so they're PPI. You can definitely get those at Pam. I really like these because they're water-based. They're really nice for using around the eyes. They're kind of nice translucent colours. And because they're water-based, you can go all around the eyes and everything, and they're it's much safer to use than regular Illustrator. The other thing that I've seen done with them, which was very cool, was somebody had a gelatin eye bag, and they actually pre-painted the back of the gelatin piece with glazing gels before applying it. It was a really nice way to have the colour looking like it's coming from inside the skin.
Someone said, can you use Gafquat to seal the hair?
Absolutely. Yeah, you absolutely can. Gafquat's basically hairspray without any spray in it. It's basically just a solid form of Gafquat. So yeah, you can use whatever you want. Absolutely.
Someone wants to join. And then, sorry, what product is the previous one laid on her hair?
Laid on the hair, we use the Got to Be Glued. That was just to spray the hair down. And then I actually just used the Kryolan Elastics Matte just to stick the actual bald cap down. So that's just a bit of bald cap. What's that Kate saying? Come in spray form as well. Right, so I'm going in with the Sunburn colour now. Again, I find if I try and be too particular with a lot of these, with the colour application, I accidentally start doing patterns. And as soon as you start, it's the same I find with knotting. If you try and not do a pattern, you end up doing a pattern. And so I just try and be as rough and as quick as I can. I'm going to tuck this in because I think you get the most organic.
Cape also available at Pam.
Cape also available at Pam, yes. Don't forget inside the ears. Now this will look so messy and rough, but it really does come to life when everything is on top of it. So if somebody's got very tan skin, because obviously if you burn the top layer of skin off, you end up with you basically take all the tan layer off the skin, you take off that top layer. So if somebody has very tan skin, to get a nice pale base underneath, I do tend to spray a like airbrush a white or flick some white Illustrator just all over the whole area first, so that you get these nice pale bits sticking out.
Why glazing gels over alcohol paints?
I'm actually going to use some alcohol paints now anyway. I just particularly like these colours, which is why I've used them in the first place. But I'm about to go on with the Illustrator now. But there's you can do it all with Illustrator. I just really like the effect that you get with these. And like I said, you can go closer to the eye. I'm not going to go around Hannah's eye today. I'm just going to do a couple little patches, like darker areas.
What brushes are you using?
I am using these are my favourite ones. They are just they're a goat hair brush, I believe. They're actually just for watercolour painting. I don't know if you can see that, but there are other ones as well which I use a lot for makeup. They're the Renaissance ones, so those are like a squirrel, these are a goat. So these are a little bit firmer, these are really, really soft, so I prefer those for straight makeup, but I really love these for effects stuff because you just get a really nice random finish with them. So I want to leave some nice pale areas as well. The next colours that I'm going to go in with, so I'm just using the Illustrator palettes now. I'm just going to use one of these kind of mauvey tones here. I think that's actually called light mauve. I'm going to go with a little bit of red as well, and that will be all my base colouring done.
Is there any way of lowering the text as it's over your lovely work?
Lowering the text? I don't know. That one. That might have
someone saying just tap the screen and they'll drop down.
Ah, there we go. So yeah, just going in with a bit of mauve. We want all the colours to overlap each other so that you just get loads of different tones throughout the whole thing. So I like to dab on with one brush and then kind of dab away with the other one. I'm just using a little bit of this red now as well. I don't want too much. I'm going to add a little bit of fresh blood at the very end as well in a couple of areas. So this is just for a little bit of extra.
Did you say you stuck a ball cap on the hair beforehand?
Yes, yeah. So that's just a little bit of ball cap stuck on. It was just a scrap of something I had lying around, and just stuck it on with a bit of spirit gum.
What illustrator palettes are you using?
I'm using the Complexion and the FX palette.
Any good websites to find reference images?
There's actually a few good places on Instagram. There's an account that I follow called the Medical Mentors, which is not for the faint-hearted or anyone with a that can get quite queasy, because it's just all real life images of injuries and kind of skin conditions and stuff like that, and they have great reference. It's quite hard. I find it quite hard to find reference of injuries as soon as they've happened, because obviously if it's quite a bad injury, people are just ready. They just want to treat the actual thing before they start taking pictures. So I do find it's really hard to actually find, you know, freshly happened kind of injuries. Right, now as rough as that looks now, that is all that I want to do for the colouring. That's all of my colouring done. The next thing I'm going to do is, now I'm going to go on with my silicones. So, yes, okay. Sorry, not very good at live things, so I'm going to be reading questions as well as talking. So I'm using some Platzil gel. So what I've done is I've pre-coloured all my part A's. So this is part A, and I've just pre-pigmented them with some silicone pigments, and those are the 4 colours that I'm going to be using today. I find that those are the colours that are in the skin. Harsh line on the neck. Oh, it'll go. It'll be covered with, there's going to be burn sheets and all sorts of stuff. Yep, so these are the colours that I'm going to be using for today. And then I've just got my part B. My other one is labelled. But this is the part B. So I'm going to be mixing the two together and then just applying it directly onto the skin. So what I like to do with these silicones, I like to start with the darkest colour and work my way up to the lightest colour, because I like having all the kind of all like the fatty colours and things to sit on top, otherwise they get a little bit lost underneath. So the one thing I have to...
What colours did you colour the part A?
It was just silicone pigments. Just use silicone pigments to do those. So one thing which I'm sure everybody here knows, don't dip back into your pot. So I did lend these to somebody recently, and half of the pot had kind of gone off because I think they'd gone from the part B back into the part A. So I use a clean end of a spatula every time I go into the part A. I am going to mix it on my hands, which isn't... I'm not sure it's the cleanest way to do it. I do often sometimes work on one of these. It's just paper that's designed for mixing colours with. You just get it from an art shop. Do you know what? Maybe I'll mix it on here actually.
Are you going to use any part C at all?
No. Deadner. Do you mean Deadner? I think she might mean Deadner. I am not going to. I don't need it to go kind of softer. I'm not going to be making pieces as such. This is really just to build up a kind of texture on the skin. Right, so I'm just going to start with my darker colours. And again, because everything in the skin is such kind of organic textures and stuff. I'm not going to be really particular with any patterns that this is going on. I just want to pretty much just cover all the colouring that I've done. But we want the dark, you know, the dark bits of silicone to go over the light bits of paint. We want, you know, light bits of paint to go over, you know, we want it all to cover each other, because I find then you get so many different colours without actually having to put that many colours in there. So I'm just being quite rough with this. You can use a spatula, or I'm just using a tongue depressor.
Is the silicone you're using similar to Sculpt Gel?
It is similar, but it's more fluid. It's a lot more fluid, so I would say it's easier to work with. But you could absolutely do the same with Sculpt Gel. Absolutely. You might just want. Sculpt Gel doesn't come with a part seat, but yeah, you just want something that's really nice and fluid, so you can get nice, like a nice smoothness. Because what we basically want to do with this is kind of get rid of the skin texture, because you'd just be burning off that top layer of the skin. Sorry, my dog's just heard another dog outside.
Just to clarify, it's Platsil silicone like the stuff you use for running prosthetics, not a gel silicone like Skin Sculpt Mercy?
Yes, but you can use basically you could use any silicone to do this. Any silicone that you can pigment, you can use.
What brand are you using?
This is just, it's Platsil. So this is really just to get that kind of shiny, smooth texture, but you can use whichever silicone you want. Right, so I'm going in with this slightly lighter pink colour now. So I've been told that the video will cut off after an hour, so if it does, I will we'll save it and then come back on to finish off.
Platsil number 25?
25.
25.
But I have used 10 before as well. Yeah, I've used 10 before, but really, if you've got silicone at home that you just want to use, I would just give that a go. I'm going with the lighter colour.
How long does this silicone take to cure on the face?
We don't really need it to cure for what we're doing. I found that just throughout the day, you know, it will just go hard. Because of the warmth of the skin, it actually goes quite quickly. Because the skin is so warm underneath. I found we did a little test yesterday, and after about 5 or 10 minutes, it was, you know, we could basically peel the whole thing off in one go. The only thing we needed remover for was the colour underneath.
Are you avoiding going into the hair by parting?
Up here, I'm guessing, yeah, I'm just trying to stay away from the edge. I've actually brought a bit of hair up with me today, so I was planning on just laying on a little bit of hair over the edge. So I was going to pre-burn a little bit of hair and basically just use Prosaid cream to lay that in around the top, just so the ends of the hair looks all frazzled. So as you can see already, a lot of the colour underneath, you know, the detail is gone, which is why you don't have to be quite so specific with the colouring process underneath. I'll be honest, I don't recommend doing it over a rug, because when you drop all your silicone on the floor, it goes all in your rug. So, okay, I'm going on with this nice kind of fatty colour. These paler colours, I like to kind of just use for highlights. So yeah, I'm just mixing my silicone on my little piece of paper. Otherwise I end up with it all up my arms.
Hi, Keely.
Keely, hello. So what I'm probably going to do, because I didn't quite cover the hair enough underneath the bald cap, I'm just going to use these lighter colours to cover a little bit of the hair. I think what I'll also do is I'll leave some of the burn sheet heavier in this area as well.
If your model has facial hair, sorry, I can't see because your hands are...
Sorry.
Like a full beard, would you pop a bit of ball cap over that, or is it best on folk with no facial hair?
I mean, I have not tried putting a bit of bald cap over beard before. I suppose it could work. I think Kate Benton's listening to this. She might be the best to give you advice on that. If it was, I mean, ideally you want to do it on clean skin, just to get that smoothness.
Kate says, how long did you allow for this makeup, Pippa, and how often were you doing it?
Oh, I mean, it depended the severity when we were doing it on the show Relic, because we had some times when we just had an area like this that was burnt. We had some times where it was a full body. And so I think the full body ones we left about 4 hours. We left about 4 or 5 hours. If any of the Relic girls are listening now, they might be able to jog my memory. But yeah, I think we left about 4 or 5 hours for the full body ones, and for the head ones, I think it was maybe 2.5 hours. Because once we've done this a few times, you really get the hang. Like, you can go pretty quickly with it.
Poppy says 4 hours.
4 hours for the bodies or for the faces?
2.5 hours for head.
Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah, we'd quite often have 2 of us working on it as well, which obviously makes it quicker. Right, so the next colour I'm using is this nice light, it's like a light mauve colour. This is actually my favourite one. When this one shows through, it's I think it's the nicest colour. It's my favourite one, which is why I'm putting it on top, just so I don't lose it underneath. Just to show you the time.
Yeah, it's 1:22.
Oh, great. Oh my god, we've only been going for 20 minutes.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, I have a feeling, maybe apart from the laying on the hair, I think we might get this done within the hour. Because after we've got these last little bits on, I'm going to put on the KY and then we'll put the burn sheet on. Okay, so this is my last colour going on. Yeah, this is the colour that looks really nice when it shows through. So again, as you can see, I'm being really quite rough and not specific with putting all this on. But I think it's what helps it look most organic. I'm probably just going to colour inside the ear, so I'm not putting too much silicone in there.
What is the colour is the first silicone you used?
The first one was this dark red colour. So I'm basically working up in tones.
And what are you using to mix the coloured silicone on?
So these are, I think these are for mixing watercolour paints on. You can just get them in an art shop. They come in like a big sheet like this and I just cut them down. I quite like mixing my Illustrator colours on here as well, because I find that once you've finished your day of colouring, if you're matching something the next day for the same makeup, then you've got your sheet and you can just kind of tape your sheet up to your mirror, and it means you've got all your colour palette so you can match it all the next day.
And how do you choose your colours? From references?
Absolutely, yeah. Your references are your best friends with stuff like this. So I think a lot of the time we see so many makeups, like makeup burns and makeup things, that we think we know what colours are in the skin, but then when you actually start looking at real reference, you start seeing all these bizarre yellows and pinky mauve colours and all of that, and I think it can really surprise you what colours are in there, so I tend to always try and work from reference. See, it's really warm in here, so that's actually setting already. I don't actually need it to set for what I'm doing, so I'm just going to move on to the next stage. Also, just work tidy. With this kind of thing, you can get so messy so quickly. So I just always try and work as tidy as I can. Okay, the next thing I'm doing, going on with the KY jelly. So again, I've got my 4 pots of KY, and these are the colours that I'm going to be using. So similar kind of colours, we've got that pale mauve, that orange colour, the dark one. I think we used an odd pigment for this because it's got glitter in it. It definitely shouldn't have. And this one, which is just a pinky colour.
Burn but make it fabulous.
Burn but make it fabulous. So I think we actually coloured these with acrylic inks. You can get acrylic inks. I've actually got another good tip for acrylic inks, but we'll talk about that later. So I'm just going to go straight on with these. Again, I'm going to start with the dark colour. I'm going to work my way up to the light colour.
And what did you use to colour the KY?
Acrylic inks. So you can use acrylic paint. You can use like a little tiny dot of acrylic paint. It doesn't need much at all. But because the KY jelly is water-based, you just want any pigment that's water-based. So I suppose you could use liquid watercolours, you could use acrylic inks, you could use gouache, anything that's water-based basically. What?
Poppy.
What's Poppy saying?
Looking bloody gorgeous.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the dark colours. I'm just going to introduce a little bit of light and shade in here. So just a few dark areas. But again, just to keep it looking really random, we want the dark KY to go over the dark colour, over the dark colouring, over the dark silicone, but also over the light bits as well. That's how you get such a mix of colours in all of this. You don't need to stick the dark bit to just over the dark bit.
Are you aiming to get any particular edge?
Edge, we'll work that out when we come to it, I think. I'm going to use a bit of Sunburn Gel around the end, just to really bring all the pink up, but I'm going to do that as like a final spray. Okay, that's probably enough. I'm going to put some of that in your ear, sorry.
Sorry.
But we just want to get that shine. I might have to use a brush for this. Okay. That's probably enough dark. So you can see why if you work nice and tidy, this can actually go on pretty quickly. Because if you've got all your pots lined up, it's a fairly quick process. I think this pink, when we coloured this pink, this must have been a different batch because it's a little bit kind of candy pink, which it wasn't supposed to be. It's meant to be more of the pink that the silicone was. But I think it will still work anyway because we have odd colours in our skin. So, right, we want to just try and avoid all these drips and things, which is obviously going to happen because of gravity.
Where can you get those pots from?
It will be one of 2 places that I get all my containers from. There's one place called the Plastic Bottles Company. That's one place that I get pots from. The other place is a company called Ampulla, Ampulla. But those are the 2 places that I tend to get all of my empty containers from. But they do, I think it's Ampulla, they do all these bottles as well.
Could you use Silicone and Ky Together just for extra texture? Could you use just one if you didn't have both?
Absolutely, yeah. I think if I was just to use one, it's tricky because what the silicone does, the silicone basically erases the skin texture. So the silicone creates this really smooth layer, and what the KY does, it gives us slip for when we put the bald cap plastic on. So we want, you'll see when I put the bald cap plastic over the top, that we'll start pushing it around, and the KY really gives it that slip, but the silicone gives us that smooth texture underneath, which stops it looking like skin. It looks more like raw flesh. So I would probably say you want both, But you could, I mean, there are 0 rules in makeup, so you could absolutely do whatever you wanted.
Rachel was saying that Pam have some of the containers Pippa's using.
Ah, there we go. Buy them from Pam.
Is acrylic colours safe to use on the skin?
I think once they're suspended in a product like this, they are water based. So I would say they're absolutely fine, because once you mix them into things like silicones and stuff like that, then they're kind of encapsulated by the actual product that's carrying them.
KY is to be added at the end, right?
Yes, KY goes on top of the silicone because it's going to help us push the bald cap plastic around.
What is the biggest mistake to avoid when doing a burn makeup?
Not following your reference. Yesterday I put too much of everything on, and that wasn't great either. It just you want the thinnest but smoothest area you can get. So potentially, yeah, just putting too much on. I've put my spatula in the wrong pot. But also, yeah, just not following your reference. Just really, really look at your reference. But I think that probably goes for any kind of casualty makeup that you do. Again, going back on with this white, which is my favourite when it peeks through when we do the burn. Again, I'm just going to use a bit of that white to go over the hair where I've not quite coloured it properly. I just used a bit of foundation to try and knock out Hannah's hair colour, and I put that underneath the bald cap.
Kate Benton said, Pippa looks great. Have you ever tried folding the soft bit of the ear up and taping it so that it looks like the ear is burnt and shape distorted? Absolutely.
So when we did a acid burn, and we wanted it to look like the ear had actually melted off with the acid. So what we did, we glued the ear back with Telesis, and then we used some fish skin to not actual fish skin, the Kryolan product fish skin, to put it over the ear just to really reinforce it. And then we actually used the bald cap over the top and took the bald cap all the way to here. And what it did, it just made that whole section look like it had burnt off. But yeah, you can play around with any bit, so just taping the top bit down, taping the bottom bit down. Obviously it just depends the effect that you want in the end. But on my Instagram page there is, I think you might have to go down a bit, but yeah, there's one where it's actually a video of us dissolving the cap plastic into the ear, and it looks really gross. Okay, so I think I'm happy with that for the KY section. I'm going to come into the inside ear a bit later. Right, so now I'm going to go on with my cap plastic. So if we were just doing a acid burn, we go straight on with the cap plastic with no colour on it, and I might do a little bit at the bottom to just show you. Actually, do you know what? There's loads of videos on my page where you can see it going on without any black on it. It just gives you quite a different effect, but it just means you can start pushing all the skin around and everything. But today I'm just going to go in with the black. What I learnt earlier, which was terrifying, is that cheap fancy dress hairspray dissolves your cap plastic. So when I sprayed my cap plastic with this, the whole thing started dissolving before my very eyes, which was terrifying because I only had the one sheet. So I've used this. You just get it from Boots. It's just black. You do need quite a few layers of it though. If you don't spray it really black, it just doesn't look right. So,
would it be possible to get pics of the varying colours of Platsil and KY afterwards for ref?
Yes, absolutely. I will post one on. I'll post one on my page, and we'll get one on the Pam. Up with Pam as well. Oops. Okay, so this is the sheet of cap plastic that I prepared earlier. Sprayed the top. That's with the L'Oreal. This bit down here that I can see you through is with the cheap fancy dress hairspray. And that is what will happen if you use the other stuff. It just must have a lot more alcohol in it. So for today, I'm going to use this top bit that isn't ruined. Okay, so if we've got any really big lumps, I'm just going to smooth those over. But you can see, I don't know if you can get in a little bit closer, where all the colours are mixing, you're getting some really interesting kind of patterns within the KY as well, and it's just doing it on its own really. It's quite nice to just do it all nice and organic, kind of takes a lot of the work out. Although if you were doing something for continuity, you might want to do something else like an actual piece, because the chances of getting the colours exactly the same all the time are pretty hard. It's also made this go really solid, which we don't really want, but I might use that a little bit later. I might give it a little go. Right, I'm just going to ask Hannah to close her eyes.
Right, no pictures,
sorry?
Questions for a bit.
Okay, that's alright. It's just while I go over this bit. Actually, I'm going to get you to keep your head up, because I don't want anything to run down. You can keep your eyes open actually for a minute, if that helps. So I'm just laying all this over the top.
It's my widow look.
Right, this is the bit where you kind of need to be careful. So I've used Super Baldies, and the reason I've used Super Baldies is because it dissolves away with IPA, and I wanted to use IPA around the face rather than acetone, which is what Baldies is made out of. Actually, yeah, close your eyes for me. So, depending on how thick you've made your... I'm going to take this front bit off first, so that Hannah can see, so she can answer questions again. This will look very odd for a minute, but it will come to life, I can assure you. Keep your eyes closed.
Mm-hmm.
I've got my finger under that, I don't want that to go anywhere near Hannah's eye. So I'm just blending that off, I'm just going to lay it down on top. So I'm not pushing anything close to Hannah's eye there. Right, I'm going to come back and blend all that out later. This is the fun bit.
Was the sheet itself pre-made?
Yes, so I put up on my stories yesterday, and I'll add it to my highlights, but it will still be there at the moment. I actually did a video of how I made the sheet.
Have you used any glue?
No, nothing. So the KY jelly is holding this in place. And I don't want to stick it down because I want it to be able to move around, which you'll see in a minute. I'm going to take off the outside just so I'm not trying to contend with all of that as well.
It's 1:40.
Okay, so we've got 20 minutes left. So I reckon we'll get all the sheet done, and then if anybody wants to see me lay hair in, I might need to come back for that bit. So I'm just going to start blending all this away now.
Did Pippa say Super Baldies dissolves with IPA, not acetone?
Yes. So regular Baldies dissolves with acetone. Super Baldies is IPA. So you can see now as we start playing around with these sheets, what it's going to start doing is revealing all that colour work that we've put in underneath. And you can kind of expose as much or as little skin as you want. But I like to really start bringing out all those like nice colours that you've put in there.
Will it move throughout the day with the KY jelly, or will it pretty much stay in place?
Weirdly, I think because we're reactivating the bald cap plastic, as the IPA dries, the bald cap plastic kind of settles back into a solid sheet of bald cap plastic. So weirdly, even though there's all the KY jelly underneath, it tends to actually stay. We found that it kind of tended to stay where we'd put it for the rest of the day. It was surprisingly low maintenance. The only thing we needed to do to keep it looking really fresh was we would just put extra bits of KY jelly in the exposed bits of skin.
What's the difference between baldies and super baldies, or is it just how it's dissolved?
So yeah, it's basically one is acetone based, one is IPA based. So we were making silicone pieces recently, well, a while ago, and I wanted to make them with super baldies. We were doing, big 2-part mould pieces. I wanted to make them with super baldies because one of our actresses was quite sensitive to removing things with acetone, dissolving edges with acetone. But what we found is that we actually had huge problems getting them to encapsulate properly, because especially when you're airbrushing super baldies, each layer tends to dissolve the layer that's underneath it, and so it ended up taking kind of 7 or 8 layers with a drying time of about 45 minutes in between each layer, just to actually just to build up enough just to encapsulate the piece. So although I will always try and use super baldies when I can, there's some occasions that you just have to use the acetone based stuff.
What type of burn are you basing this on? Is it a fire burn?
Yes, it is a fire burn. If you want to see more like an acid burn, it's basically, I use the same technique, I just don't spray the cap plastic back. And there's lots of pictures of it on my page. But when you're doing it without the black, all these little bits of skin really bunch up into like nice white jelly
pustules.
Yeah, it's quite gross actually. So yeah, you can expose as much of this as you want, but you can see all those bright yellows coming back through. Close your eyes for me. I want to put her back. I just don't want it to run there. Just don't want it to run into her.
How many layers of baldies?
So I've done a video with how many I did. Basically, I think I did 4. And then I tested it by, if you pick up a section of it with a pin, if you pull it up, if it's got holes in it, like lots of little tiny holes, it needs another layer. So I gave it another layer, I pulled it up, there weren't any holes, but I just wanted to be sure, so I gave it one more layer. So I think in the end I gave it 6. Gave it 6 layers in the end, which, to be honest, I think I probably could have stopped at 5. This is a little bit thicker than I've used before. Oh, that's disgusting, that bit.
What is the handle for your page? At Pipwoods.
Pipwoods. So with this, I mean, it's just really down to you to kind of be as creative as you want, really. You can choose how much skin you want to expose. I'm going to leave this bit quite dark because some of Hannah's hair was showing through. So I just want to make sure that's all.
What ratio was the super baldies mixed in?
4:1. 4 parts IPA to 1 part baldies.
Could you do a list of products you've used?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what did you use to spray the sheet?
I did mention this earlier. So first of all, I used this. This was just a very cheap one from Amazon. It probably cost about 50p. And I sprayed it on and it dissolved the whole sheet, which was terrifying. And so I ended up going back to this. It was slightly more expensive, but it didn't dissolve the sheet. So it must have a lot less alcohol in it than that one. So I know this is more expensive, but it's definitely worth using. Can use Vaseline instead of KY. I don't know. There's something about the KY that just gives this shine. And I think it's the thick viscosity of it that works really nicely. I feel like Vaseline would be... I don't think you'd be able to push everything around quite as easily.
Hi Pip, will you go over any of the skin with anything to bring out the colours?
Yes, I probably will. So what I'll probably do is, once I've got all this to a good place... Sorry. Once I've got this to a good place, what I'll probably end up doing is going around the edges and just blending it all into the skin a little bit more.
It's 146.
Okay. So I reckon in about 15 minutes we'll have finished the burn. Does anybody want to see me laying on hair? If they do, I will do it. If everyone's just happy having seen the burn, then that's absolutely fine.
But could you use gelatin instead of KY?
Yes, I suppose you could. But if the gelatin sets, then you can't push the cap plastic around quite so much.
Lots of thumbs up to laying on hair.
Oh, okay, great. So I'm just going to use a little bit more KY. This was just something that we found really brought out. So again, just using all the different colours. I'm just going to use a bit of the yellow first. This was the one thing that we just found we had to keep doing. We just had to keep going in with the KY to just bring up all the shine, because you really want that raw skin showing through. So a few of the lighter bits as well. And then what I might do is I might pop a little bit of the blood colour in there as well.
Someone says, when does your school open?
Oh, I'm always happy to give any tips and techniques I can if anyone has any questions about anything. I'm very open to a DM. So just send me any questions. Right, so I'm just going to use a little bit of blood. Just in a couple of areas, really lightly, but it's just to bring out a bit of... Just to add a few more colours in there. So I don't want much, just a little bit. Right, the next thing I'm going to use is the Sunburn Spray. Kate Benton taught me about this many years ago, and it's just been such a lifesaver with so many things. It does need a good spray, shake, so make sure you always give it a shake and a test spray first. Okay, can you close your eyes for me? So I'm just going to spray can you take a deep breath? Ready? So that just really brings all the redness up. Sorry. Okay. Don't worry about the dog. She's okay. That's it. It's all done. And I'm also going to use a little bit of the charred as well.
Which blood are you using?
Oh, sorry. This is the Dave Stoneman, the Bloody Real Light, which is my absolute favourite. I know it's not in a proper pot there, but yeah, it's the Bloody Real Light. It's the Dave Stoneman one. Right, I'm just going to use a bit of the charred just around the edge for a little bit of texture. And then I'm probably just going to go back in with my Illustrator palettes just to mottle out those edges. I'm going to go around here. I've just seen on the camera that is a big solid line there. That's why it's helpful to have a mirror, so you can always look at your work from afar.
Someone's saying, is this burn new? Which I'm presuming they mean fresh.
Fresh. I would say yes. Might just take that bit off actually. Open up. Oh. Close your eyes for me. So I'm just going to go back here and close your eyes. So just with a bit of Illustrator just to mottle out that colour a touch. So that's just a prime red that I'm going in with, the Illustrator prime red. And then I'm just going in with a bit of the dusty mauve from the complexion palette as well. But I mean, you can play around with this for as long as you want, kind of working out that edge, blending it in. Also, it depends how it happened as well. I might leave it there for now, because what I'm probably going to do with my last few minutes is I'm just going to pop a little bit of hair onto the top of Hannah's burn. As every makeup artist knows, you could play with this for hours and hours and hours, and I probably would carry on playing with it for quite a while, but I think because some of you want to see a bit of laying on, I'm just going to do that really quickly. So just angle it forward. Okay, so I'm just using a bit of Prosade cream and a little orange stipple sponge. Now obviously it's Prosade, so this will dry clear, and we want it to be clear before we lay any hair onto it. The great thing about the K-White is that you can just keep working it, so you can just keep going back into it, pushing things around, and it just keeps it staying really, really fresh. So I've just got a bit of hair here to match Hannah's colour.
Do it on camera?
This is going to smell. I don't want to do it too close to you. I'm just using a lighter just to burn a little bit of the hair. I just want the ends to look a little bit frazzled. What I'll probably do is cut that in half. Don't worry, I'm not going to do it near you. When we had to do a full head burn, what we did was we actually used a bald cap and laid a bald cap over a wig block, and we did all of this on the bald cap first, and then we laid all the hair onto it, and so it just meant that when our actor came in, we just had to slick their hair down, put the bald cap on, and it just saved so much time. We basically just had to do the front of the face. Okay. For anyone who doesn't know what burnt hair smells like, it smells awful. You can't sit there. Just stippling that out a little. And we've got 4 minutes. Hot. While that's drying, I'm just going to get rid of this little bit as well. Just a little bit thick for me. Now you can also do a technique where you, so cat plastic, the Glazing, you can actually, there is a technique where you can put it into water and set it on fire and it kind of goes black and crispy, and you can use that to actually add more texture onto here as well. So I'm just going to use a little bit of this hair, just going to press it into the top there. There's a little tail comb just to press all these ends in. I'm just going to squidge a bit of this into the KY as well. And then just make sure some of this is all poking out. A little bit more shine in there.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So yeah, just really bringing up that shine. And then I'm going to pull these out. This has got quite a bit of hairspray in.
Yeah, 1 minute 40 remaining.
1 minute 40, that's okay. So, because this is just hairspray, it will comb out nice and easy. Hopefully, sorry if that's hurting. And obviously you can put as much hair up the top here as you want. And then I would just dress all this over the top, cover all that edge. If anyone has any questions that they haven't had a chance to ask on this, feel free to send me a message. But might get, let's just move this in a little bit closer so we can kind of see the final thing. There we go. Does anyone have any questions before we go? We've got 50 seconds remaining.
I don't know if the questions have stopped working, maybe.
Okay. It's definitely gone quiet on that front. But yeah, like I said, if anyone has any other questions, just head over to my page and ask me, and I'll hopefully be able to answer them for you.
You're going to do the acid?
Hmm?
You're going to do
this? No, I'm going to do that. Okay, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and see you all next time.